Welcome to the Faces of Leadership podcast, sponsored by Command Presence Training and hosted by CEO Michael Warren. At Command Presence, we believe leadership comes down to two things: people and action. In each episode, we sit down with leaders from across professions and communities who are stepping up, making a difference, and leading where they are with what they have. Together, we'll explore the lessons they've learned, the challenges they've faced, and the decisions that shaped their leadership journey. Because the ultimate question isn't just what we can learn from them, it's what we can learn from each other as we strive to become the leader we wish we had. Today, Michael is joined by Jeffery Manzer for episode 25, Winning the Career, Not Just Surviving It.
Well, hello there, everybody. We're back. Okay, it's been a while if you've been a follower of this podcast, and I certainly hope you are a follower of the podcast. But I'm going to make a confession here because we made the decision that we were going to transition from an audio-only podcast to a video and audio podcast. And this is a leadership lesson. Sometimes, folks, ignorance gets us. And ignorance is, I just don't know something. And what I didn't know was that there's a lot more involved in a video podcast than there is an audio podcast. So, a couple things. Number one, thank you for sticking with us and understand that we're going to be putting a couple of these out every month. I encourage you to subscribe on your favorite platform. It's also going to be available on YouTube in a video format, also on our website. So please subscribe. The second thing is I'm going to ask a little bit of grace from you. Okay. Whenever you start something new, especially when you are as technically disinclined as I am, there are bound to be some snafus. So for example, as we're recording this, there is some repair work going on in my house. So you're likely to hear some of it. Life happens. So I ask for your grace today as we start this thing back up. I'm excited about this opportunity. I've missed doing this. I've missed the interactions with you. So let's go ahead and get started. So I want to introduce my guest for today, and I'm super excited about him because his name is Jeffery Manzer. And folks, there are a whole bunch of letters after his name, okay? And that's usually an indication in our line of work. That's usually an indication. That's a clue that we're going to be talking to a smart guy. And so he certainly is. So I want to make sure that I get this correct. I'm going to start off by saying, number one, he's a Marine Corps vet, okay? So it's ironic how often in our podcast we find people that are lifelong public servants, and this is another example of it right here. But he is a professional counselor. He is a law enforcement veteran, Marine Corps veteran, a strength and conditioning coach specializing in first responder health and human performance. Human performance, folks, if you've been listening, you know that that's a passion of mine as well. He served both on the operational side of things, but also on the clinical side of things in this. And he currently works for the Harris County Sheriff's Office in Texas, which is a huge agency. And if memory serves correct, normally it falls into like 1, 2, or 3, depending on the year and stuff like that, in largest sheriff's offices in the entire United States. But he does some interesting work there because he provides guidance, if you will, in stress management and resilience and wellness services. He really is working to help first responders mitigate occupational stress, improve their physical and mental readiness, and sustain healthy relationships outside the job. Because folks, you've heard me say it before on this podcast, we don't have a work life and a professional life and a personal life and friend life. You've got one life, and what happens in one has impact on the other. He also likes going to school, apparently, just like I do. He holds a master's degree in kinesiology and also one in counseling, and he's a frequent speaker on these topics. He's got over 20 years on the job. He's worked as a patrol division. He's worked as an FTO, which is another passion area of mine. But the work he's doing right now, when I came across this guy, I hate using the word inspirational, but the work is inspirational because when we inspire others and we can inspire and they can vicariously serve folks, we do. And his off time, and he's probably a lot like me, doesn't have a whole lot of that, but he enjoys spending time with his family and traveling with his wife. And if you look at his background, he also enjoys baseball, which is another point in his favor. So Jeff, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here.
I appreciate it, Mike. Let me look for that guy you were just talking about, because I don't think he's here today. I think he did. I think they put me in place. I don't know. So I guess
Did
we'll
I
talk
get
about
the
it. I don't know.
did
Whatever.
I get the episodes mixed up? I'm sorry.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know if that's the right guy. I mean, it's like the old was it oxymoron in the
Yeah,
military?
exactly.
Military intelligence. You started talking about an intelligent guy, and then you said I was a former Marine. So I'm like,
Yeah. Hey, well, listen.
I don't know who you're looking for.
Let me bring it to my side of the microphone here. If there's a dude with a face made for radio, it's me. So what do? We decide to throw video into it. So there we
There you go.
go.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
So
Awesome.
a Marine Corps vet, and I love hearing
Yes.
about people's military experience. And it doesn't matter how long that experience was in a lot of
Hmm.
cases. What we find a lot of times is that experience has lifelong
Mm,
impact on the person.
absolutely.
How was your military service? Does it continue to impact you?
Absolutely. Every day. Every day. I think, in short, my experience as a Marine made me in the man I am today. I'll be honest with you,
Wow.
straight up. I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. Man, how many years has it been now? 97. So I guess that was, what, man, 30 years ago.
Wow.
Wow. Um, was on my way out in 2001, the summer of 2001, and we had a horrible tragedy here in our country with September 11th. For those familiar, my EAS date was September 7th of 2001,
Wow.
and so yeah, a couple of days later we had September 11th. I reenlisted, joined the reserves, did a couple of deployments, and got out in the spring of '05. So yes, the military shaped me as the man I am today. Every day, I think I can't help but lean back on the leadership skills and the leadership lessons that I learned when I was in the Marine Corps. Even as a young man, right, was resistant to some of the things, but I was like, okay, this is life. This is manhood, and I definitely carry
Well,
that today.
okay. Let me ask you. I grew up.
Hmm.
I don't want to say I grew up in a sheltered environment, but very rarely does someone grow up in an environment that exposes them to so many different types of people and so many
Hmm.
different types of backgrounds as
Hmm.
what you get when you join a military unit.
Yeah.
And I think there's incredible value in that type of exposure.
Hmm. Absolutely, 1,000%. See people from all kinds of cultures, all kinds of walks, all kinds of different lifestyles and backgrounds, and they all bring that to the game and to the dimension and the culture, or the environment, and so you learn from it, and that's, yeah,
But
absolutely
so
unique.
I'm a big movie guy, right? And I
Hmm.
love
Hmm.
National Treasure with Nicolas Cage. And I
Hmm.
can't remember which one it was now, but where he ended up going to Philadelphia, and behind the brick he found these glasses that had all these different color lenses. And when you looked at this document, depending on what lens he
Hmm.
had down,
Hmm.
he saw something different. And that diversity of perspective that is provided when
Hmm.
you are forced to work with people that have different upbringings, different beliefs, different work ethics, it really does force you to see things through different lenses. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with it or that you would be successful that way, but it does. I think it makes you grow up faster.
Oh, no doubt, absolutely. And I talk about that a lot with people, and I never really, I guess, relate it to or look at it from the perspective of leadership. But even today in my clinical work as a clinical counselor, I talk about perspective, right? And I talk about our different life experiences, and it's just like you said. You see things through a different lens, and well, you read it differently, you see it differently, you digest it differently, and so, not only is that in a leadership perspective, but also in a life perspective, right? Just a culture, a life, a learning, a growing, a becoming a better person perspective. And so I like that analogy. I can't remember if I saw that movie,
It's worth
but I do
Yeah,
remember. Yeah, I do.
it's worth going and looking at that because when you see him moving the lenses
No,
and the mixing of the
no,
lenses and stuff like
no.
that, I think it's an incredibly
That's cool.
it's a good metaphor for what we're talking
Yeah,
about here. And
no
so
doubt.
you know when you have to consider somebody else's perspective, it's
Hmm.
not just their perspective, but it's also those things that they place importance on. And
Hmm.
so, you're a teacher, you're an instructor, you're certified with TCOL, and
Hmm.
you've been instructing. But it's ironic that two instructors. can have the exact same curriculum, yet their class fundamentally is going to sound the same, but there may be more emphasis placed on one area by one and more on another, and that's based on those experiences.
Absolutely. Isn't that so cool?
Yes.
Isn't that phenomenal?
Yes.
Isn't that great?
It's not detrimental.
No,
It's
absolutely
helpful.
not. Yes, you can take, and if you do it the right way and it's done the right way, I guess you can go to that same class, and if it's presented by two different instructors, hey, you had to have learned something,
Yes.
right? It's like the gun world, learning how to shoot. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna minimize it for people that maybe not familiar, but you shoot, right? But why does this guy who over here teaches the same fundamental shooting and this guy who teaches the same fundamental shooting, why is it different? Why should I choose this guy, or why should I go to that guy, or what makes these two guys different? Their perspective,
Yes.
their experiences that they've learned, and how they learned, and maybe even how they teach it. So absolutely, it's a phenomenal thing.
I'm a big believer in the power of words. Those that have listened to me before, the words we use and the way that we use them have tremendous impact on people and on the message. And oftentimes it's the verbiage or the terminology that they use in the training that's what clicks with the student. So I love that diversity of perspective thing.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. I try to play it every time. I try to use that every time. I shouldn't say every time, but majority of the time when I teach, I try to.
Well, and I think it's interesting that if a teacher does it right, trying to draw out the perspectives of the students is important. And I think it's the same for leaders. My perspective is influenced by, I may have 20 years of experience that got me to the level that I'm at in the agency, but I also have a different elevation, a different altitude than and so being able to draw out those perspectives from those that have been entrusted to our care, I think is a skill that leaders need to work on.
Even in totally, absolutely, it's a continual process, the continual thing. I mean, if we're not continually learning, what are we doing, right?
Yeah.
Why? What do just go lay down and go do something,
Yes.
whatever. But it's going back to the leadership in the military, right? And even in law enforcement, you learn from the quote unquote bad leaders,
Yes.
right? The leaders that you learn essentially, okay, I'm not going to do this. And I've had those experiences. I had those experiences on the Marine Corps. Young guys, immature people that were in leadership, or older senior people who had been around who just didn't know how to do it. They just didn't get it. The leadership thing wasn't in their bag. And you learn from them, and you learn, okay, well, that's not how to be a leader. And
you brought us here. You brought us here, so we're going to go down a little rabbit hole if we can.
Let's do it.
At the beginning of this episode, I asked for a little bit of grace because we're doing something different. And I think a lot of times when we're following somebody, when we're subordinate to somebody, I think sometimes we need to afford them a little bit of grace, because I think that a lot of times they're being put into positions that quite honestly, maybe they weren't prepared for. In our profession that you and I work in, oftentimes what determines whether or not somebody gets promoted is how well they're doing in their current position. Well, I may be a heck of a patrol officer, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be a good patrol sergeant. And so I'm not saying that we don't have expectations. We shouldn't have standards for those above us, but cut somebody a break. And again, let them share their perspective with you down the chain of command, and I think that would be valuable as well.
I think grace, to add to that, is that I think grace comes with maturity.
Oh, yes,
and on both sides, the leader and the subordinate, if you want to use that word, but there grace that from the leader that, okay, my style might not be their style, my flavor, my perspective might not be their perspective, so I need to afford them a little bit of grace. Okay, let's communicate and figure out how we can make this work. But also at the same time, to that subordinate, okay, I need to afford my leader some grace, because, well, he's learning, he's trying to figure it out. He doesn't see things the way that I see things. So here's a little bit of grace. Let's work on communication and how can we make this line connect, so to say.
Yep.
So, grace. But unfortunately, and I think it's maturity. I think, when
Yes.
When people grow and they become mature, that's where the grace comes, and not just in leadership, but in life, right? And that's a hard, that's a hard one.
There's a saying, and I probably say it wrong, but there's a saying I often refer to, that youth is wasted on the young. That oftentimes that maturity that we talk about, if we're not out there intentionally trying to develop that maturity, oftentimes that maturity comes too late in life to be really meaningful. And because maturity, like you said, if you just sit back and wait for it to happen, if you're not growing intentionally, then you're probably not going to get to the level
Right.
that you need to be and that your people need you to be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let's talk about you get out of the Marine Corps, and at some
Mm-hmm.
point you decide to take this trip into law enforcement. What was it that drew you to law enforcement?
It's, well, to be honest, my plan wasn't to get into law enforcement. So, I think my backstory will probably, maybe to some people, oh, okay, that makes sense. My dad was a cop
Okay.
all my life, right? That was as far back as I can remember. And I watched him. I grew up watching my dad be the police, right? Like everything was about the police for my dad, right? And if his friends were cops, right? Like his friends, his private circle were cops. I can remember growing up and going during the summer, going to other cops' house to swim in their swimming pool and have parties, and they'd come over to our house and all that stuff. And vacations, we it was always with other cops. And my mom was a dispatcher, so I was living that life. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to do it. I was like, no, it's not what I want to do. I want to do something else. And I had plans. Um, I went into the military obviously at a time where we weren't in serious conflicts, and so I was probably I'm like, yeah, I'll go to the military, give it a try, right? And it wasn't until I got out, well, what I experienced in the military, what I went through initially in the military, is what really led me down that role to become a police officer, and then that was where the respect, the real appreciation and respect for what my dad did for ended up being 32 years. I had the great fortune to work with my dad for about 5 years,
Wow.
5.5, almost 6 years at the same time. We didn't work partners together, stuff like that, but we worked at the same agency together, and we would see each other in passing. And I had a couple of months where I was able to work with him on the same shift, and so we got to back each other up and experience each other on the same calls together. But it was only for a short amount of time, 5 or 6 years, like I said, towards the end of his career. But it wasn't, no, I didn't always want to be a cop, right? And it wasn't until my military experience, especially the latter half of my military experience, where really that appreciation changed, and for what my dad did. And my dad was also a military veteran of the Navy, and so yeah, it wasn't always in
Well,
my vision.
you and I recently had a chance to spend a day together in Texas on a class we call Leading Without
Mm-hmm.
Rank, and there's a part in there where we talk about that peer leadership, how peer leadership can be really, really uh, instrumental in guiding someone down the road. And the example I like using is that, imagine, if you will, you're Ken Griffey Jr., and then you get the opportunity to play on the same major league team as your dad, and play in the same outfield. And it just seems like that would be such a powerful experience, because he's my dad, but seeing him in that context, it's, in our profession, we often use the phrase, the totality of the circumstances. Man, you got to see, yeah, I mean, you knew your dad was a cop. You knew what you did. You thought you understood about what your dad had gone through, but when you
Mm-hmm.
got to see things in the totality of the circumstances, it really had to change, at least a little bit, what you thought about your father.
1,000%. I couldn't say it better, and I really did. And my respect for him, my appreciation for him, and the things that he had gone through to provide for me and my brother and sister, and my mom, all throughout our youth. Yeah, like it's almost like that. I got it, and that's what all fathers want,
Yes.
right? They want their kids to get to a point, whether it's 17, 18, or 28. I got it.
Yes.
I get it. And but yeah, you're right. Absolutely. We had great experiences, and there was a lot of growth in that in that short amount of time. And I never really looked at it that way, but you make a great point.
I just the and your mom was a dispatcher, and I
Mhm.
think one of the most unheralded parts of the criminal justice profession are dispatchers.
Mhm.
I mean, if we're
Absolutely.
we're honest, I mean, we make fun of the fire department all the time. We call them second responders, that type of thing. But the truth of the matter is, the
Mhm.
dispatchers are the first responders.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
and I've said it before, and I think one of the hardest things about that job is that they have to send people into potentially dangerous situations, but they often don't get, and this is my terminology, they often don't get the closure because
Mhm.
once they dispatch, now they've
Mhm.
got to go on to the next phone call. They don't get to work through that process right there. And so when we talk about health, when you talk about mental health and physical health in your work, that has to be very trying, especially in law enforcement. It's typically not one thing that drives it. It's the culmination of things,
Mhm.
and that has to be. We're starting to see states recognize them as first responders, but I still
Mhm.
don't think we've arrived, at least in that part right there.
Yeah. Um, One of the cool things about Texas is TCOL, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement Education, has Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, yeah, has started to issue licensure for dispatchers,
Good.
communications officers. So it's a licensure program, just like a police officer. You get a basic licensure, advanced, and you move on. And it just makes them more credible,
Yes.
as a credible position. But yes, I have heard those exact words that you said from the mouth of dispatchers before. I don't get closure, right? I move on, I finish this call, and I move on to the next one, and I don't know what happened in that last call, and it sticks with me. It sits on my mind, and I wonder, and maybe if I get the chance later in the week or some other time when that officer who got dispatched comes through the dispatch office, I get to ask, hey, do you remember about that call XYZ? And if they remember it, they talk about it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They say that often. I don't get closure, and so that it is I don't want to say neglected. I don't want to say forgotten because I don't want to imply that it's maliciously done. I just think it's the nature of the beast, so to say, where they they kind of they kind of do get um, not forgotten about, and I don't know a better word.
I would say neglected. And the only reason I would use that word right there is that I think in a lot of organizations, midnight shifts get neglected.
Hmm.
And it's because there's not the physical presence of them. And it's not
Hmm.
because leaders are trying to be evil or trying to be neglectful. It's just human beings. We have limited capacity, and we tend to be focused on those things which we are physically present with. But man, I tell you what, being a dispatcher probably made your mom a heck of a little bit better as a mother. Just saying, because dispatcher sometimes is like herding cats, which is kind of like
Oh,
being a parent.
oh man, I can't remember how many. I can't tell you how many times my mom would just like this. My brother and I were just. I mean, pardon my French. We were just hellions,
Oh
right? My
yeah.
brother's. I'm the oldest. My brother's 4 years younger, and so we're running around the house, right? Just a bunch of hellions, and um, my mom always had this monotone, just this never no inflection in her voice whatsoever. And we'd get in trouble, and she'd raise it just a little bit that much and give us that look. And we're like, we knew.
Yeah.
There it
Yep.
is, right? Like,
We have reached the line here.
yep, there it is. Yep, yep, no doubt, no doubt. And we knew that, and that's where that was. I don't know. Maybe that was good for us, right? Because she was a dispatcher and she was taught,
Yeah.
hey, you got to keep your cool. Because if she didn't have that, she'd probably be beating us up and down the house. I'd probably still have bruises all over me from those beatings from long
You
ago.
guys still wouldn't
But
be
yeah,
speaking. You know what I mean?
no, no, yeah, no. So yeah, so maybe it was a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a good thing for me and my brother. Like she did learn that as a dispatcher, learn that calm, cool. Keep it cool attitude, right?
Yeah.
Because well, might not have made it to 47. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, so at some point in your career, you decided, you know what, I want to go to school,
Yeah, yeah,
and I guess the question I would ask, and you can answer it however you want to.
yeah.
What was it? What was there a defining moment where you said, you know
Mm,
what, I need to go and I need to find this out, or I need to find a way to do this?
Great question. Thank you for asking. And because it's a culmination. It wasn't really one thing, it was a combination of things. So I get out of the Marine Corps, and very much so the type A, suck it up, press on, right, do your work guy. Still think I am today to some degree. Get into law enforcement. I'm young. I'm in my mid-20s. I'm not riding the coattail of my dad, but I'm known.
Right.
Right. I'm known. Like I'm not referred to by my own name. I'm referred to as that's his son.
Yep.
Right. That's, and so there was this expectation, and I get into law enforcement, and probably, I think 3 or 4 months after I separated from finally separating in the spring of 2005, I think the summer, midsummer, late summer, I started the police academy. And so was really just a small little transition. But anyway, still coming from the Marine Corps, still had a call it baggage from the Marine Corps, right? And all my time, the things that I did there. And then I get into law enforcement early in my career. Talk about high expectation, my name, talk about, just I was working in my hometown. I was working in the building and with people that my dad worked with, and I grew up watching and meeting and knowing, and now I'm coworkers, and I have expectations, and of me with them, life on the street as a cop, and I was a go-getter. I think I was, at least, and got into a couple of things that we would call critical incidents in our line of work, and was still very much holding on to that. I got to suck it up and press on, right? I didn't have time to feel it, so to say. Very much so, young man, told you, young family, had young daughters, and I didn't have time to really just slow down and deal with those stressors, those things that I had been through. Saw some negative impacts on my life. Saw some negative impacts on my family's life. Wasn't managing my stress well. Coupled with I lost some friends to suicide from the Marine Corps. Started hearing news, and this guy died by suicide. This guy died by suicide. This guy died by suicide. Dealing with my own stress. Couple of friends that I grew up in law enforcement with, probably about 5 years into my career. One of them was killed in the line of duty, and then one of them quit and was on the verge of suicide due to some stuff that he had been through, and they kind of pushed him out. I say they, the department, just kind of pushed him out, and it opened my eyes. It was like, wow, like there's got to be a better way. Like we got to do something about this. And I got introduced to a gentleman who was a mental health professional. He had experiences in the military and law enforcement as a first responder, and he kind of opened my eyes to this. Like, man, there's a better way. And we worked it out, and in short order, I was like, man, we got to do something. I felt this calling that I needed to, I guess, do something different. And so started the long journey of going back to school, and then studied post-traumatic stress all throughout school. That was what when I went through undergrad, that was my goal. Went through, and then I got into grad school right away. Studied post-traumatic stress through my entire time. 2017, early 2017 is when I completed my graduate program, and then in 2018 is when I became fully licensed, and that was when my goal, once I got into the mental health world, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. I mean, essentially, like when I first started in law enforcement, I was gonna be like every other cop, right? I was gonna do 25 years till they pushed me out, and then I was gonna go teach people how to shoot guns, right, and tactics and all that cool stuff that's on YouTube now. That's my goal, right? I was gonna do that. But then this mental health thing came into my world, and I realized there's a change, right? I had a different trajectory, and then my goal was I was gonna get out of law enforcement full-time, out of a uniform, off the street, and I was going to come and provide mental health services, clinical mental health services, specifically stress management to law enforcement veterans. And that was going to be my job. That was what I was going to focus on. And so now I'm blessed, and I get the fortune, fast forward now, almost 10 years, I get to do that. And
So that was a counseling side of things, correct? Well,
Yes.
when did the kinesiology come in?
Oh, wow. So kinesiology is more recent. So um, what year? Probably 3 years ago. I just started realizing that, I mean, even in the beginning, I started realizing that there was this direct relationship to mental health and physical health. Essentially, like if I feel good, I'm gonna think good, right? My mood's gonna be good, essentially, simply. And so I started studying the effects of physical health on mental health, and realized there's a great relationship, direct relationship to that. And so it just, and then that just started opening my eyes into this whole idea of human performance, overall human performance, right? If I can focus and I can target all of these things within our law enforcement community, our health, right? We know that law enforcement officers are not physically the healthiest people, right? We sit around a lot, and then maybe every now and then we might have something pop off, and we get a little active, and we go back and sit in the car for the rest of the day. Do a lot of sitting. We don't, there's not a lot of preparation, not a lot of movement, not a lot of mobility, not a lot of strength and conditioning that goes on prior to this, and then we're asked to do things. And if you look at our current, I don't want to say current culture of law enforcement, but you can look at recent events, right? It's not hard. You can look at recent events within our profession and see see evidence that if police officers' physical conditioning was in a better place, we probably could have reduced use of force, right? Just plain and simple. And not not targeting anybody, but we have out of shape officers that are in this profession, and they get to a point where they're like, I can't physically do this, and I'm to the point where this person might overtake me, and so the only thing in their head they're thinking is, well, I got to use force, I got to use deadly force. And the truth of the matter is, I'll just call it like it is. If we were in better shape, as a whole,
Yeah.
we
No,
would
no,
we might
no.
be able to prevent some of that.
I think we both agree that from a justification standpoint, they certainly were justified in doing what they did at the time.
Right.
But
Right.
it, to me, uh, preparing for an event like
Yeah.
that, it is it has to include more than just going to the range. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
it's so much. If I am confident in my physical abilities, then I'm able to think more rationally because I'm human. It's when I am unprepared, whether it be
Yeah.
physically, psychologically, whatever, that we start to get reactions. And often what we get are overreactions, not because the people are bad, but because they're human beings. And that's why I love the whole idea of human performance. We have to look at these people not as officers or deputies. We have to look at them as humans. What can we do to help this human perform better in their mind, in their
Hmm.
bodies, in their spirit, all those things, because they're all connected and they have impact on each other.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, and thanks for getting me back on that track. I got a little,
No,
kind of
no,
went down
no,
a little rabbit hole
you,
there,
I love
and
that.
and we, there is a connection. And like you said, if we're putting our mind, when we're physically conditioned, we're physically in a good place, not just in our law enforcement career, but in our life,
Yes.
right? We're talking about longevity. We're talking about lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, right? Lower resting heart rates. And all of these things are biomarkers and physiological markers that show health, good health, longevity, right? And that's what we want. And one of the things, and part of that story is, there's a big part of stress that goes into it. But law enforcement officers, on average, there was a stat going around, and I'm going to butcher this, the source, but there was a stat going around that on average, officers only live 5 years after retirement. And I don't remember who first started it. I've seen it multiple times from different places, but come on, no, no,
Yes.
we should not be doing this job for 25 to 30 years and then live 5 years to enjoy retirement. It probably not even 5 years of enjoyment,
Right.
because we probably only got maybe a year, maybe two, and then we spent the rest of it having to stay at home, close to home, because we had to go to doctors
Going to
because of our health
doctor's
problem.
appointment to doctor's
Yeah,
appointment. So
yeah.
can I ask you this right here? Because again, I was blessed to be at a conference with Dr. Leah Kaler, who's considered to be the FBI sleep doctor, and
Mhm.
she just released a book last year called "If Sleep Were a Drug,
Mm-hmm.
You Couldn't Afford It." And I always knew that the sleep deprivation in law enforcement was a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's we look at things in silos. If you drink
Yeah.
too much, it's going to have negative impact on your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
If you have if you don't get enough sleep, if you don't get enough good sleep, it has negative impact on your physical health and on your
Mm-hmm.
psychological capability of making a decision. And then, here's the example I like to use. If you have somebody who is a student of use of force, if they do a lot of training in empty hands, if they do less lethal, they practice with their firearm. My experience has been that those people tend to use force less than those who don't prepare well. Because
Mm-hmm.
they're confident in their abilities, they
Mm-hmm.
can take the time to think. They put themselves in better situations. If I get enough sleep, I'm going to put myself in a better situation. I'm going to be able to use more of my cognitive
Yeah.
capabilities. And so I love going and looking at worlds that are non-law enforcement. There is so much information out there about this in the aviation world. And if you
Mm-hmm.
go and look at the truck driving world,
Mm-hmm.
the requirements that they have for rest and the use of alcohol. You can get arrested for drunk driving as a truck driver much earlier than you can as a so the information's out there. We just had to find a way
Mm-hmm.
to do it. And it sounds like that what you're being afforded the opportunity to do now at Harris County is to do just that, is to grab something from over here and integrate it into a holistic program that impacts the whole person, not just one aspect.
Absolutely. And, I got passionate here, a couple of seconds ago with you, and that's just where I'm at. I'm passionate about this topic
Yes.
because I want our officers not, I think it's ridiculous that on average, we make 5 years after retirement. I
Yes.
think it's the craziest thing I've ever heard when it comes to that data. But you're absolutely right. When you come to the sleep thing, that's where I like to use the word human performance. I didn't coin that term. I stole it
Yes.
from somebody else. There's other people that use that term, but human performance is essentially what we're doing here. Yes, sleep affects everything, and all these different things play into how we do our job. We're putting our body and our brain in a better place through all these different elements: sleep, rest, nutrition, working out, lowering our heart rate, lowering all the physiological things that we can take better control of through dieting, rest, proper sleep, nutrition, all that good stuff, right? We're showing that officers can make better decisions, right? Do better things. They feel more confident. Um, uh, I I'm so fortunate to work where I work with Harris County Sheriff's Office. I have a leadership element that is very supportive of what we do. First of all, they're pioneers. Well, the upper leadership, sheriff, chiefs, are pioneers in this bringing in an embedded unit.
Mhm.
There are other
Yes.
agencies. A matter of fact, Houston Police Department has been doing it for like 20 years. But when it comes to law enforcement, it's a very brand new, very foreign thing, so to say. Having an embedded behavioral health service within the agency. My shirt that I wear to work says Harris County Sheriff's Office. My paycheck is Harris County Sheriff's Office, and I work for those people, and I'm embedded, and I get to work in different roles at the agency, providing mental health services, consultant, direct services, operational services, all this and that. Well, one of the things a project that I'm really proud of that I got the thumbs up for recently is a human performance program. It's a pilot program, and essentially I have recruited 12 people, volunteers, of course, 12 people, to partake in my pilot program. And so the intent is, in short order, is I'm going to be with them for about 10 weeks. We're going to have a pre-test and a post-test. I have narrowed down a battery of assessment that I believe functionally relates directly to law enforcement, right? Physical movement, stuff like that. So we're gonna have a trap bar deadlift. We're gonna have some running. We're gonna have I don't have the assessment in front of me. We're gonna have some different things that are within this assessment, and I'm gonna track blood pressure and resting heart rate over the course of these weeks. And the idea is, hopefully in a perfect world, we see improvement, right? And I don't care if it's a 10%, 5%, 20% improvement of our deputies, and then present that to chain of command and say, hey, look, imagine if we had a full-time human performance program. What if we had a full-time person that could be in the academy at the BPOC to talk to cadets, could be at the academy teaching classes on a regular basis about diet, nutrition, sleep, rest, recovery, mobility, stretching, right? Just working out in general to be prepared for the job. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, just some basic things that we can do to stay in functional, operational readiness condition. And, and then be embedded in all the different facets of the agency. Go to roll calls and talk about things like sleep and nutrition. Do all these different things and be just there. And then be at service to the deputies where, hey, look, Jeff, you got me, I'm bought in. Let's work one-on-one together, right? And that's my goal. That's my dream is if I had it my way, present this data and they're like, yep, run with it, go with it. I bless you. You're my full-time human performance specialist, right? And that would be awesome. Also still providing the mental health stress management resources, because that's part of the human performance thing, adding all that in there. And so that would be awesome. But yes, I work for a great agency that allows me and affords me to do that. And they, they allow a lot of initiative. The leadership allows a lot of initiative with ideas and stuff like that. Now, at the end of the day, I know I'm a big boy that, if this doesn't work well, they're like, I don't think so, right? That's not what we hired you to do. Cool. Awesome. At least they gave me the opportunity to try it.
The willingness to listen and consider is important, because one thing that I would add on to what you're talking about there is the willingness and intentional learning to improve, to keep the plasticity, if you will, of the brain, is a very valuable thing as you grow older, right there. But we're never going to have. You may find a unicorn now and then, but we're probably not going to have a learning organization without learning leaders. We're probably not going to have a healthy organization that emphasizes mental and physical health if we don't have healthy leaders. And so recognizing that is important, because Jeff, part of I battle against cynicism sometimes. Okay, and this is where cynical might comes out just a little bit, because I get a little bit upset where we have people that will promote, and rightfully so, that the having embedded personnel in our organizations to deal with those in mental health crisis in the community. I think that's an incredibly valuable tool. But if we recognize there's a need in the community, our officers are a reflection of the community. It's reasonable to assume that there are going to be people in crisis within our organizations.
Absolutely.
And we may not be able to prevent the crisis, but mitigate the effects of the crisis. To intervene early on the crisis is something that let's embed for everybody. Our de-escalation class, the second module is on emotional intelligence. How can I help somebody in crisis if I myself am in crisis? And so it's important. And so you had talked about all these things. I think that too many leaders, they look at that as an either or choice when it should be an and choice. Okay. It's not, do we do physical health or mental health? The answer should be, we should do physical health and mental health.
That's right. No, totally. I'm right there with you. And I think it's awesome that our profession in law enforcement across the culture, across the industry is starting to turn to that. I've met I met a lady who is I forgot what agency she's at. I'll get it wrong. I know I will, but she's a human performance coach. She's not a police officer. She's from the strength and conditioning academic side of things, but I don't think she was in the military either. But regardless, my point is that's what she does full time for a law enforcement agency, right? She does her job. Her role is human performance and strength and conditioning, a little bit of stress management. She's not licensed or certified on the mental health side of it, but that's what she does there. And then you have other agencies that bring in not just contract to, but bring in a team of mental health professionals that work in their agency. And And I think we do need both. I think there's a huge need of both. I mean, I can't say that any other way. I think it's a culture thing, to be honest with you, Mike. I really
Yeah.
do. And
But
there's a
I
culture.
think you and I are realistic too. We recognize that there are
Hmm.
budgetary
Yeah.
restrictions, but I believe that leaders do what they can where they are with what they
Yeah.
have. And
That's
let's go.
true.
Huntington, West Virginia has a fantastic program, and it was started with grant money, and they brought in some professionals that were part of the agency. The city saw such value in it that once the grant money ran out for the employment side of things, they decided to start funding it because listen, we should do the right thing for the right at the right time for the right reasons. Don't get me wrong, but there
Right.
is a fiscal benefit to this. When
Hmm.
your people are physically and mentally fit, you see less sick
Hmm.
time use, you see
Hmm.
less injury, and when there are injuries, you see a quicker recovery time.
Hmm.
And,
That's right.
and so there is benefit, financial benefit to the organization. But I want to go back to something you said earlier
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
you were talking about how short on average, I mean, our retirement is. The act from an actuarial standpoint, there's a reason why investing in police retirement accounts is a good investment because you're not going to get to the point where you're losing money. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
That's right.
so I despise the phrase officer survival
Hmm.
simply because surviving isn't good enough. I don't
Mm.
want you to survive your career. I want you to win your career. Because if you win your career, you're going to live longer than 5 years because
That's
you've
right.
done it in a healthy way. And,
That's right.
and I don't want you crossing the finish line with, you know,
Hmm.
tourniquets attached
Hmm.
everywhere, mentally and physically,
Right.
and stuff like that.
Right.
Man, I want you energized for what's the
That's it.
next chapter in my life. And
That's it.
man, we had a guest on this show, and she was one of the first Navy helicopter pilots, and she just had such a great story. And I was asking her how she did so well in making the transition from the world of naval aviation into the private sector, into Amazon and some other places that she had worked. And this is how she put it. And I thought it was so beautiful. She goes, Mike, I never wanted aviation, I never wanted helicopters to be my life story. I wanted it to be a
Mm.
chapter in the story.
Mm.
And if we look at law enforcement, no matter how noble it is and how valuable it is, ideally it's a chapter in our life, and hopefully there are several chapters
Hmm.
that follow it.
Yeah.
In too many cases, all we get is the epilogue. We just get, hey, here's how it ended. And
Yeah.
so I think that what you're doing, and if you wouldn't mind explain to me, you do work out of the academy, at least for
Yes.
part of your job. Why the
Yes.
academy?
Well, I mean, one, that's where all the hub of training is at any law enforcement
Yep.
agency, right? We don't have, we have the ability at Harris County Sheriff's Office to have our own embedded in-house police academy, right? So all of our training instructors are Harris County Sheriff's Office employees. All of the cadets that come to our academy are going to eventually go out and be Harris County Sheriff's Office. So we're not a regional police academy like a lot of other places in Texas are. So why the academy? One, that's where again, like I said, the hub of all training is done. But two, I think the most important place to reach people is in day one, in the beginning, is at the BPOC, the basic police officer course is what we call it here in Texas. Right there, because it's all about culture. If I can get these guys and gals from day one and start talking about mental health, being proactive about their mental health, and being proactive about their health in general, if I can talk and I can get them to buy in on day one, I'm going to have them at year 20. I'm going to have them at year 25. I'm going to have them in any year between. And so then when they see me or when they see somebody from one of my coworkers in my office, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that guy's going to talk about mental health. No big deal, right? We come from a culture, try not to go down a rabbit hole too far, but we come from a culture, the people that taught me how to be the police were from a culture of you keep that stuff to yourself and you suck it up and you go to work. You deal with all that stress some other time. And that in those hours that you're off work, that's when you deal with that stress. You come to work and you do your job. You got a job to do. You got a responsibility. Your partners, they they got to know you got their back. So there's a culture thing, and that's a conversation, right, we can get into. But reaching people, back to your question, reaching people at the BPOC in the very beginning, right, is where it is, because those people, someone in that group is going to be a leader one day. They are going to move the ranks. They are going to become a sergeant. They're then going to become a lieutenant. They're then hopefully going to keep going. There's somebody in that group of 70 cadets will possibly be running the agency one day. Might not be tomorrow.
Right.
Might not be next year, but
What?
20 years they could be.
But here's the beautiful thing about it. I mean, it's just like it is with any training, is that some of them may end up leaving Harris County and become a police chief
Possible.
somewhere else. Well, now we've
Very
impacted two agencies. And,
Very
and
true.
that's where you start to see the growth.
Yeah.
And so I think, and I just want to put my terminology to it, making it normal
Yeah.
to be healthy.
Yeah.
It is what I think that every leader should be aspiring for their organization, making it normal to be healthy, to have healthy tools in place, so that we don't have to make jokes about things like start a marriage, or talk about somebody's drinking or that type thing. Man, let's make it normal to be healthy. Let's make it normal to be vulnerable. And I absolutely agree with you. If we start that on day one, Dan Cockrell in his book, How's a Culture in Your Kingdom, says from a culture perspective, the most important day in your people's career is day one. And we had to be intentional about it. So as we're getting close to wrapping things up here, a good friend of mine that we've had many discussions with at ILEADA and that type thing, he used to be a first sergeant for a basic training company in the Army. And he talks about the first day that the recruits arrive at their basic training company, not the reception station, at their actual. And he goes, Mike, it is the most choreographed and rehearsed day of the entire cycle. And he goes, from the outside, it looks very frantic, drill sergeants running around. He says, but man, there are so many safety officers on the peripheral that are making sure that nobody's losing control, including the drill sergeants, that they don't become overly emotional, and establishing that on day one, that these are the expectations, these are the people that you can trust. I'm responsible for you. I'm here for you. It's going to be tough. Most people are willing to do tough if they know they have the support.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That is absolutely true. Yeah, and I hear that a lot in people that I work with. They become aware of this. Maybe they weren't introduced to this mental health thing, proactive mental health thing. I'm all about proactive,
Yes.
right? Be proactive with your mental health. Like, don't wait till something's bad. Like, do something beforehand. Like, anyway. And I hear from people, man, Jeff, you helped me see this in a different way. You helped me see that, I can manage this stress and I can do this career and I can do this job and I can do this healthy, right? And I don't need to wait until the last minute or when it's too late or XYZ. So, yeah. No doubt.
Jeff, there's a reason why you should put your seatbelt on before you put the car in drive. Because if you try to put it on right before the accident happens, you're probably not going to be very successful. And it's the same thing with both our physical and mental health. And so I last thing here we'll talk about you and another one of our instructors, Jessica Martin. You guys have been doing some work because we're partners with Lexipol, and I think that their wellness app is so incredibly well done. But you guys, you kind of saw this, say, hey, I think we can actually make this better.
Yeah.
And you guys have been doing some stuff, and you don't have to go into great detail, but just give me an idea of what it is that you guys are trying to offer in that app.
A resource. So essentially a resource, bottom line resource. So we want to be able to pull resources from different agencies that we either work for, know of, become familiar with, or have made contact through training or classes. And we put these resources, this is a one hub, it's a one-stop shop, in other words, for resources. We put all these resources in there, and eventually, if I have it in a perfect world, we'll have, if somebody calls up and says, hey, Jeff, I was in your class last week, and man, I'm over here in Louisiana, and I need to talk to somebody. But like, we can pull the app up, or I can send the app to him and be like, hey, go here, search Louisiana. Louisiana's got a list, or whatever, or wherever state. And then as we meet more people and make contact with more people and are in more people's communities or agencies with this training, we'll pick their brain for the resources, right? Go to these classes and say, hey, what are your resources for peer support? What are your resources for mental health? What are your resources for, suicide crisis line or whatever? And like, okay, was in California or whatever state or whatever. And there's my list of resources I collected while I was there, right? And we'll put them in the app. And so that when somebody calls and says, hey, what do you got for whatever? And I hope if I have something, hopefully, if I've done it the right way, we've done it the right way, not me, but we've done it the right way. We'll have a bank, we'll have a resource, a one-stop shop. But also Lexipol has done a great job with it. They've put other resources in there, like articles. They have people on staff that are writing blogs, that are writing articles, that are physical fitness, nutrition. I think there's mental health stuff in there, but it's real quick, real short stuff. I think they even got little videos, like little quick short, videos, 15, 20 seconds, because that's where everybody's attention span is today, right? And on something, one item of something, like one topic of, diet or, working out or stress management. And they'll talk for 15 seconds on it and they'll put it on the video or put it on the app in a video. And yeah, so that's I think that's where we're going. I hope that answered that. One-stop shop for resources.
It's exciting to me because you know what? It may not have all your answers, but it may have an answer, and it may not have an answer for everything, but it gives you direction. Because it becomes overwhelming sometimes when you don't know where to start. Like I said at the beginning, I got people downstairs installing a new furnace and a new air conditioning coil in my house right now, right? Well, I didn't just blindly pick somebody out of the yellow pages. For those of you who are old enough to remember what a yellow page is, right? I called up a construction buddy of mine and said, hey, who do you use for your jobs?
Who do you get?
Because if we can get that information and share it, man, we tend to make better decisions up front, and there's a lot less wasted time. So man, I'm so excited that you're part of our team now. I'm super excited about what you're doing in Harris County. I've been blessed to go and teach down there at the academy several times for my law enforcement brothers and sisters out there. If you get the chance to go there, you really ought to go and see it. It's an incredibly, it's an impressive facility, and to have an agency of that size to not only recognize the need, but say, you know what, we're gonna work on this need, and to bring in you and the members of your team to try and address this early, I think that's what innovation is.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you for your service, both military and law enforcement. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the work that you've been doing. If it's okay with you, I would like to put your email address in the show notes. So if some of our listeners, if you do have resources in your area that you have found to be very helpful to you or members of your team, if you don't mind sharing that, shared knowledge is power. And so if you could share that, I'm not trying to spam your inbox. Nobody needs to be putting that on restroom walls or anything like that. But please share your experiences, and let's be honest with each other. If you've had bad experiences, let us know that too, because I want to avoid the bad mechanic with my vehicle.
Absolutely.
I certainly want to avoid it with my health. So.
Absolutely.
So Jeff, thank you so much, my brother. I appreciate you. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. And if you're open to it, maybe I'd like to have you back on the show in the future, and let's talk about this pilot program to see what you found out about it. I'd love to hear the results of that.
Oh, I'd love to. Absolutely. Absolutely. The answer is yes. Thank you for this opportunity. I get to check podcast guest off my
there we go.
Bucket list.
There we go.
Right.
Yeah.
I was all like, that'd be a podcast guest one day. That'd be pretty cool, right? And then there it is, right?
Well,
there you go.
I'm just saying it's something you can throw on your resume. You've got a recording of yourself now, so.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you for inviting me. This has been a wonderful experience, and man, I can, I know your podcast isn't 8 hours long, but I can sit here and talk for 8 hours about this stuff.
Yeah,
and I appreciate you. And again, thank you so much.
And so, in closing, to our listeners, as we close all of ours, as you go throughout your work, as you go throughout your day, over the next few weeks, I want you to strive, be the leader that you wish you had.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for the Faces of Leadership podcast, sponsored by Command Presence Training. A special thank you to the leaders who share their experiences and lessons with our audience. For more episodes, resources, and training opportunities, visit commandpresence.net. And remember, leadership is about people in action. Strive to be the leader you wish you had. We'll see you next time.